You were 7 years old when you learned to read a room before you spoke, when your mother's silence became a language you had to master, when peace became your job and childhood became something you watched other kids have. You didn't grow up too fast by choice. You were forced into a psychological role that shouldn't exist. And it left you with traits most people will never understand. Rare traits that psychology is only now beginning to explain. Not all of them good, but all of them profound. So, if you were the child who became the adult before you were ready, this is what that experience carved into your psychology. If this already feels familiar, subscribe and drop a comment. You're not alone in this. Now back to the video. Psychology has a name for what happened to you: parentification. It's when a child becomes the emotional caregiver for adults who should have been caring for them. And when this happens during critical developmental years, it doesn't just hurt, it fundamentally rewires how your brain processes safety, love, and your own worth. But here's what most people miss. That rewiring created traits in you that are genuinely rare. Let's talk about what you became. First, you developed what psychologists call hyper-vigilant empathy. You can read people with terrifying accuracy. You walk into a room and within seconds, you know who's upset, who's lying, who needs managing. It's not a superpower you asked for. It's a survival skill you had no choice but to master. Most people rely on words. You learn to read micro-expressions, tone shifts, the space between sentences. You became fluent in unspoken pain because your safety depended on predicting adult emotions before they exploded. And yes, this makes you an incredible friend, partner, therapist, but it also means you're exhausted because you can't turn it off. You're scanning threats that aren't there anymore. You're managing emotions that aren't your responsibility. Your nervous system never learned the difference between empathy and survival. Second trait, you're hyper-independent, but not in the way people think. You don't ask for help because somewhere deep in your psychology, you learn that needing someone is dangerous. That vulnerability equals abandonment. When you were the child holding your family together, asking for support wasn't an option, so you built walls so high that even you can't see over them anymore. You became the person everyone leans on, but you lean on no one. And here's the tragedy. You're not actually independent. You're isolated. True independence means you can choose to rely on others. You don't have that choice because your childhood taught you that adults aren't safe, that support is conditional, that you're on your own. Psychology calls this avoidant attachment dressed as strength, and the world celebrates it. Look how strong you are. Look how you never need anything. But strength without softness isn't strength. It's armor that's fused to your skin. Third, you carry what I call borrowed maturity. You were told you were wise beyond your years, so mature, so responsible. But that maturity wasn't earned through natural development. It was stolen from the childhood you should have had. You learned to speak like an adult, think like an adult, comfort like an adult. But underneath that performance, there's still a child who never got to play, to be reckless, to make mistakes without the weight of the world on their shoulders. And now, as an adult, there's this strange disconnect. You can handle massive responsibilities, complex emotional situations, professional pressure, but small joys feel foreign. Playfulness feels performative. Rest feels wrong, because your nervous system only knows one mode, on. Psychologists recognize this as developmental foreclosure. You skip stages you needed, and you can't go back, but you can grieve what was taken. And in that grief, you start to reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned. Fourth trait, your boundaries are wrapped in guilt. Even now, saying no feels like betrayal. Taking space feels selfish. Prioritizing yourself feels like abandonment. Because when you were a child, your boundaries were consistently violated. Your needs were inconvenient. Your feelings were too much. So you learn to shrink, to accommodate, to make yourself small enough that maybe, just maybe, you'd be worth keeping. This creates what psychology calls boundary confusion. You can't tell where you end and other people begin. You absorb their moods, their problems, their responsibilities, and then you resent them for it even though you never said no. But here's what you need to understand. Boundaries aren't walls, they're not rejection. They're the sacred space where you finally get to exist without performing, without fixing, without disappearing. And learning to hold them without guilt is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's how you stop living in survival mode. And finally, the rarest trait of all, you carry what some call the witness wound. You see things other people miss. Patterns, pain, potential. You understand human psychology on a level that can't be taught because you lived it. You survived it. You know what it looks like when someone's pretending to be fine. You know the sound of a cry for help that no one else hears. You became a translator of human suffering because you had to translate your own just to survive. This makes you powerful, deeply, quietly powerful, but it also means you feel everything. You carry other people's pain like it's yours. You see the child in every broken adult. And sometimes you forget to witness yourself. So here's your permission. You don't have to save everyone. You don't have to understand everyone. You don't have to be the emotional archaeologist for every person who crosses your path. You can choose to witness yourself first, to hold your own hand, to finally be the person who shows up for the child you were. If you carry these traits, know this. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're someone who survived what shouldn't have been survivable. And those traits that feel like curses, they're also proof that you're still here, still fighting, still capable of profound transformation. The child you were deserved better. The adult you are deserves rest. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finally letting that child come home. For more psychology content on trauma, healing, and the hidden patterns that shape you, check out my newsletter in the description. Real insight, no fluff, just truth. You grew up too fast, but you're still growing, and this time you get to do it right.